Welcome, everyone. Or, rather, welcome to you, the learner.
Glad to have you with us.
Yeah, we know exactly why you are here. You are naturally curious, you want to get to the heart of the matter, and you appreciate taking a moment to truly understand the hidden forces that shape our everyday lives.
You want to look beneath the surface.
Exactly. And today, we are going to look at something that influences almost every single one of us, whether we realize it or not. I want to start by asking you, the listener, to just imagine your typical week for a second. Have you ever felt that fleeting, almost electric, quiet rush of being completely indispensable?
Oh, that is a powerful feeling.
Right. Maybe it's at work, a sudden crisis hits, everyone is panicking, and you are the only one who can untangle it. Or, maybe it's at home, you are constantly stepping in to fix everyone else's problems, schedule their lives, smooth over their conflicts, you swoop in, you save the day, and you get that massive hit of validation. But then, almost immediately, you crash into this state of utter bone-deep exhaustion. If you are nodding your head right now, maybe even letting out a tired sigh, you are absolutely not alone.
Not at all. It is a profoundly universal experience in our modern, hyper-connected world. And the exhaustion you are feeling in those moments, it isn't just physical tiredness from a long day.
No.
It is the symptom of something much heavier that we carry around. It's the weight of an identity built entirely on being needed.
That's heavy. And that brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring a very subtle, yet incredibly powerful, psychospiritual trap. It's a trap that basically equates our fundamental human worth with our productivity and our utility to others.
And, more importantly, how to break free from it.
Yes, we are drawing from a fascinating, concise synthesis today. It's titled The First Temptation, The Illusion of Relevance. And what makes this material so compelling is how seamlessly it weaves together three very different frameworks.
It really is a masterful synthesis.
It starts with an ancient biblical narrative from the Gospel of Matthew, combines it with the spiritual theology of Henri Nouwen from his work In the Name of Jesus, and then it layers in the clinical psychology of Dr. Gabor Mate from The Return to Ourselves.
Right. And by bringing together the ancient, the theological, and the clinical, we get a much clearer picture of what is actually happening when we burn ourselves out for others. We're going to explore why this relentless drive to be a fixer, to be the person who constantly provides and solves, isn't just a bad habit of overworking.
Or just having poor boundaries.
Exactly. It is, at its absolute core, a profound crisis of identity and self-worth.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand the trap, we actually have to go all the way back to the ancient setup. The scene is the wilderness. Jesus is fasting out in the desert, and the tempter's voice comes to him with a very specific challenge. The quote from Matthew 4, verse 3 is, command these stones to become loaves of bread.
A classic text.
Right. Now, for anyone who has ever been really hungry, that sounds like a fairly straightforward, practical proposition. You're starving, here are some rocks, make some food.
It does sound incredibly practical. I mean, on the surface, it is simply about physical hunger and survival. You are in a desert, there is a lack of resources, and here is an immediate solution.
Yeah.
But the beauty of viewing this ancient narrative through a psychological lens is that it asks us to look at the duality of the moment. Beneath the surface of physical hunger, something much deeper and much more seductive is stirring.
The real trap.
Yes. The temptation isn't really about the bread. It is an invitation to prove one's worth through usefulness. It's a progression. First, turn stones into bread. Second, turn scarcity into supply. And finally, the ultimate hook. Turn yourself into the one who fixes and provides.
That progression is chilling when you really think about it. It goes from a magic trick to an economic principle, straight into a complete reconstruction of your identity. You become the one who fixes.
And it's hard to let go of that once you take it on.
Definitely. And this perfectly introduces the concept from Henri Nouwen. He called this the temptation of relevance. It's the drive to define ourselves entirely by what we do rather than who we are. To translate this into your world, the listener's world, it's that creeping feeling that your resume, your output, or your ability to handle a family crisis is the entirety of your value as a human being. I have to admit, reading this section, I immediately thought about last Thanksgiving.
Oh, how so?
Well, I spent probably 3 hours frantically trying to fix my uncle's Wi-Fi router while the turkey got cold.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I completely ignored the actual gathering because I wanted to be the hero of the afternoon. I wanted to be the guy who saved the day. And when I finally fixed it, and no one really gave me the parade I thought I deserved, I was fuming. I felt completely unappreciated.
You wanted the validation.
Exactly. Looking back, I wasn't doing it out of the goodness of my heart. I was totally stuck in that trap. I was desperately trying to turn a router into bread just to prove I was relevant.
That is a brilliant and very relatable example of the psychospiritual trap in action. It is psychological because it rewires your motivation. As you just described, you weren't trying to connect with your family, you were trying to extract validation from them.
Sad but true.
And it is spiritual or existential because it attacks the core of how you view your own existence. In this trap, we falsely begin to believe that our value rests on three very shaky pillars: our productivity, our competence, and simply being needed by others.
The ultimate house of cards.
It really is. If you build your house on the foundation of being needed, you will spend your entire life desperately searching for broken routers or people in crisis just to feel secure in your own skin.
Wait, I have to push back a little here. I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate, but isn't helping people a fundamentally good thing? We want doctors who heal. We want friends who support us. We want employees who solve problems. Where does this framework draw the line between being a genuinely supportive, good person and falling into this toxic temptation of relevance?
That is the crucial distinction. The line is drawn not by the action, but by the attachment to the outcome and the source of your identity. Being a supportive friend or a capable employee is wonderful. But when you are operating from a healthy place, your worth is a given. You help someone because they need help, and when the task is done, you go back to being yourself.
You don't need a parade?
Precisely. You don't need their gratitude to survive. However, when you cross the line into the temptation of relevance, the act of helping becomes a transaction for your own self-worth. You aren't just solving a problem, you are essentially demanding that the person you are helping validate your existence in return.
Wow. That brings this ancient wilderness narrative straight into our modern rhythm of indispensability. It's the rhythm of saying yes to just one more request, solving just one more crisis, responding to just one more Slack message at 11 p.m. before you close your laptop. We convince ourselves that we are just being helpful team players. But really, we are feeding that transaction.
What's fascinating here is the psychological paradox of that rhythm. When you send that late-night email, or when you finally get the Wi-Fi working, there is a distinct, measurable rush. It's a spike of dopamine.
It feels great for a second.
It does.
Yeah.
For that brief moment, the universe makes sense because you are the center of it. You are indispensable. You are holding the sky up. But the paradox is that this rush is incredibly fleeting. It inevitably fades, and the neurological crash that follows leaves you with nothing but exhaustion.
The bone-deep kind.
Exactly. The sheer amount of energy required to maintain the illusion that you are the ultimate provider, that you must catch every ball that is dropped, is completely unsustainable for the human nervous system.
It's like running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up.
And every time you fix a problem, someone just bumps up the incline.
Exactly. And this brings us to a moment where we just need to stop the treadmill. I want to ask you, the listener, a deeply unsettling question that lingers right beneath all of our busyness. The text poses this beautifully. If you strip away your job title, if you strip away the advice you give your friends, the problems you solve for your family, if you are not useful, are you still worthy?
That is a staggering question. If you take away your utility, what is left? And is that remaining core worthy of love and belonging simply because it exists?
It's uncomfortable to even think about.
If you hesitate to answer that, or if that question makes your chest feel a little tight, you are experiencing the exact friction this framework is designed to highlight.
Here's where it gets really interesting. To understand why we struggle so much with that question, we have to look at the clinical perspective. This is where Dr. Gabor Mate's insights on trauma and healing come in. He focuses on what happens when we tie our self-worth entirely to our productivity. Can you walk us through his concept of fragile self-worth?
Absolutely. Mate's work introduces the concept of contingent self-esteem. When your self-worth is entirely tied to external validation, whether that is praise from a boss, gratitude from a relative, or just checking off a massive to-do list, it becomes contingent upon or dependent on things completely outside of your control.
So you're never actually in charge of how you feel about yourself.
Right. And behaviorally, living with contingent self-esteem is a violent roller coaster. Your esteem skyrockets with success, giving you that temporary dopamine hit we talked about, and then it collapses entirely with failure or even just with a lack of acknowledgement.
It's basically an addiction cycle. You are entirely at the mercy of your latest achievement.
Precisely. And if we look at the mechanics of it, the chronic stress from riding that roller coaster actually rewires us. When your brain learns that your safety and worth are tied to solving crises, it keeps you in a perpetual state of hypervigilance.
Always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yes. You are constantly scanning your environment for the next fire to put out. You get the dopamine hit of being the savior, followed by the cortisol crash of realizing you have to do it all over again tomorrow.
Which explains the bone-deep exhaustion we talked about at the beginning. You are running your nervous system like a race car engine while sitting in traffic.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychological cost is immense. This cycle of contingent self-esteem is the engine that fuels chronic anxiety and burnout. It creates a profound emptiness that no amount of achievement can ever satisfy.
Because it's never enough?
Because if your worth is contingent on your next accomplishment, you are never actually safe. The validation you are receiving is for your utility, not for your humanity.
And we are often doing all of this chasing to quiet a deep-seated shame. We might have learned early on from childhood dynamics or just the overwhelming cultural hustle culture we live in that we only get attention when we produce. We learn that to be loved, we must be useful. But there's a tragic irony here that the text points out. We strive and strive to outrun the shame, but it doesn't work. Why does striving actually deepen the shame instead of healing it? You would think achieving things would eventually make the imposter syndrome go away.
It doesn't go away because of the internal logic of contingent self-esteem. Let's say you feel a deep, hidden shame that you are fundamentally unlovable as you are. So you strive. You fix a massive problem at work. You achieve wild success. People applaud you.
And you feel good for a minute.
For a second, the shame is quiet. But then the subconscious realization sets in. They don't love me. They only love what I just did for them. If I stop producing, if I drop the ball, they will leave. So the original shame, the belief that your true self isn't enough, is actually reinforced and deepened by the success. Every success just proves to your anxious brain that your utility is the only thing keeping you safe.
So what's this all mean? The psychological toll is incredibly heavy. But when we pull back and look at the New One framework again, there's a massive worldview shift that happens.
Yeah.
When usefulness becomes our core identity, we start projecting that contingent self-esteem onto everything, including the divine or the universe at large. We start living as though love, grace, or peace are things we have to earn through performance.
It becomes transactional.
Right. We treat the universe like a giant corporate hierarchy where we have to prove our ROI, our return on investment, just to justify taking up space.
And that is exactly why the material returns us to the ancient wilderness narrative to find the antidote. Remember, the tempter said, "Command these stones to become loaves of bread. Prove your worth by fixing the scarcity." Jesus answers the challenge in verse 4 with a brilliantly simple reframing. He says, "One does not live by bread alone."
It completely rejects the premise of the temptation.
It does. It rejects the premise that physical sustenance, material utility, and constant production are the defining metrics of existence. Whether you view this through a theological lens or a psychological one, the takeaway is profound. Human life is not sustained by performance, but by relationship.
By relationship.
Yes. It shifts the entire center of gravity away from what we can produce with our own hands and toward what we can receive through connection.
This shifts us right into the practical application. The source material frames this shift as an invitation to resistance, specifically asking, what if we fasted from fixing? I want you, the listener, to really imagine that for a moment. What would your week look like if you literally fasted from fixing things for other people? If a coworker complained about a problem and instead of volunteering to stay late and handle it, you just said, wow, that sounds really difficult, and left it at that.
For many of us, that thought alone induces a spike of panic.
My heart rate just went up thinking about it.
Which just proves how deeply entrenched the temptation of relevance is in our nervous systems. We feel terrified to drop the role of the savior.
Seriously. And that leads to the second, maybe even harder invitation from the text. What if we allowed moments of holy uselessness? Holy uselessness. That is such a striking phrase. It almost sounds offensive to our modern ears. We are so attuned to efficiency, optimization, life hacking every second of the day. How do we even begin to practice holy uselessness? I need an ELI 5. Explain it like I'm 5 for this one.
Think of holy uselessness like letting a field lie fallow. If a farmer plants crops in the exact same soil every single season, relentlessly trying to maximize production and get a yield, the soil eventually dies.
It just gives out.
All the nutrients are stripped, it becomes barren. Holy uselessness is intentionally leaving the field empty for a season so it can recover its nutrients. To the outside observer, it looks like the farmer's doing nothing. It looks useless. But actually, the farmer is actively replenishing the field's capacity to exist and thrive in the future.
Oh, I love that. You aren't doing nothing. You are actively replenishing your capacity to exist.
Exactly. Holy uselessness is the deliberate practice of stepping off the treadmill of production. It is allowing yourself to just be, without having to show a deliverable at the end of the hour. And in that stillness, when we finally stop producing, managing, and fixing, we rediscover the one thing that productivity can never give us. We rediscover our innate belovedness.
Belovedness. The idea that you are worthy of love simply because you exist, full stop. No resume required, no fixed Wi-Fi routers required.
Precisely. Productivity can give you praise. It can give you a paycheck. It can give you that temporary dopamine rush, but it cannot give you belovedness. Belovedness or unconditional worth can only be received. It can never be earned. And you can only receive it when your hands are finally empty of all the stones you've been furiously trying to turn into bread.
That brings us to a really powerful synthesis of everything we've covered today. Looking at how these three perspectives, the ancient texts of Matthew, Newman's theology, and Matte's psychology, how they all interlock, they all point to one incredibly liberating truth.
They do. The core message here is a direct challenge to the hustle and the anxiety that dominates our lives. Analyzed impartially, the framework tells you very clearly, you do not need to turn stones into bread to be loved. You do not need to be the ultimate provider to justify your existence. True relevance doesn't come from frantic human striving. It flows from a place of secure relationship and inherent worth.
I have to say, digesting this material and having this discussion, there's a profound sense of relief. If you are listening to this on your commute or while you're tackling chores, I hope you feel that relief too. Giving up the self-appointed job of chief fixer of the universe is probably the most liberating thing you can do for your own mental health. The invitation here is to take the cape off. You don't have to be the hero in every room you walk into. You are allowed to let the field lie fallow.
This raises an important question, though. A final thought for you to carry with you as you step back into your day. We've talked a lot about our own internal landscape, our worth, our nervous systems, our stillness. But building on this idea of fasting, from fixing and valuing relationship over performance, if our true worth is discovered in stillness, what happens to our relationships when we finally stop trying to fix the people around us and instead just sit with them in the wilderness?
Oh man, just sitting with them in the wilderness, not handing them bread, not giving them unsolicited advice, just handing them your presence.
Yeah.
That completely changes the dynamic of how we love each other. It takes the pressure off everyone. It's a beautiful, challenging thought to mull over. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you find the courage to embrace a little bit of holy uselessness today, to let go of the illusion of relevance, and to rest in your own inherent worth. Remember, there is always more to learn, and we'll be right here ready to explore it with you next time.